So they're just putting them all together. So I'll give you my little short bio. I'm Kristen Hocker. I was born Kristen Salmon. That dude is my daddy, Art Salmon. My mom was Linda. Her birthday was actually yesterday. And this week, tomorrow, actually, is 5 years since she passed away on the last great day. That was the first feast. Tabernacles I was missed since I was born. But I was born during feast. And, let's see, I got married in 2007, and I had that little dude in the back corner. Literally 3 weeks after my first wedding anniversary. So my first wedding anniversary happened, and then 3 weeks later I had kids. And I was told I couldn't have kids, so there's a little miracle for you there. And then I have 2 brothers living. My brother Scott's in the back, my little boy. And my other brother's in California. Hey guys, how's it going, Kristen? Some of my favorite people, that's it. So I have multiple degrees because I'm a nerd, and I'm cool with that. I have a associate's degree for photography, and I got injured, so originally I was going to do aerial photography, and since I got injured, they don't let you fly when you have a bleeding kidney. So I got to do grad school, and that was that. Kidney got better, but scholarship went away. So instead I went to school for education, and so I did elementary and childhood for my associates, a second associates, and then wound up finishing my bachelor's for teaching for middle school with science and history as my main thing. A lot of people crack up that I'm a believer in God and Jesus Christ, but I teach science. And then I'm also a preschool teacher currently until this happened, which is what this is about. So yeah, I totally study nerdy things all the time. I'm very fascinated. One time they put me in the classroom to cover for the health teacher to do sex talk with middle schoolers. They didn't really like what I had to say, so I didn't get asked to do that job anymore. I was very honest with the kids when they asked me questions, and I didn't lie to them, and I also told them why their physical bodies were not ready for that kind of thing until a certain age. They didn't like that I did that. So that's cool. So basically, you get a really big fancy word to start your morning off with, ependymoma. It took me like a week to be able to say that. Kind of like saying Jason Momoa, but way less sexy. So, I'm alive, and people always ask me, how do you know that the greatest scientist are God and Jesus Christ? So basically, like I said, I'm a nerd. And platypus, that's my answer. It also proves he has a sense of humor. Everyone's like, oh, that was just evolution. I'm like, really? Australia didn't have any beavers or otters. They got a platypus. So how did a platypus in a single country evolve from something? So that's a whole nother discussion. So that's my little joke. If you ever have to argue with anyone that's like, how do you know Jesus Christ and God are great and exist and are scientists? Platypus. That's the answer. Alright. So, little trial thing. I want to make you close your eyes. Think about it for a second. So if you're imagining while your eyes are closed, but I'm not really going to make you, that you have no health problems other than having a baby belly that never went away. And you're not on medicine. Suddenly your leg gives out. You're in the middle of trying to brush your teeth and you're now on the floor. And you have no idea why. Can't feel it. It's totally numb. At your first thought, it's dislocated my hip. Nope, but you can't control it, move it, and there's no pain. So you worked all day, you did all your normal stuff, dishes, laundry, blah, 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 took your kid where your kid needed to go, and you can see your leg, and you can touch your leg, but it's not being a leg. And it's just flopping around. And then it gets really hard as the floor, and you can't even push your skin on it. It's super weird. It's like it's having a contraction without you feeling anything. You can't stand up, and all of a sudden you realize you're sitting in a puddle of pee on top of it. You're like, well, did I pee and then fall? No, you didn't even feel it. You're calling for help, but your husband's in the garage doing power tool repair stuff. You gotta sit there for a little bit because Kayla's already asleep in bed. So that's how it started. So we gotta obviously go to the ER. weird, like, he threw me into a rolling chair like that for the desk because I couldn't walk. Rolled me to the garage, hauled me into the back seat of the car, pulled me through the other side because I couldn't control my leg, like, at all. And we went there. I finally started getting pins and needles about 2 hours later. And 4 hours later, they sent me home with muscle relaxers because the CAT scan didn't show anything. Can't do an MRI without the doctor's permission, so I have to request it. So since my doctor wasn't there, and this happened on a Wednesday night until the next Monday, she was on her daughter's graduation cruise, had to wait. So my little brother came to stay with me, go Scott, and helped me get in and out of bed, into the bathroom, fed me, fed my kid. Thankfully we had 2 snow days in Kansas City, so me missing school wasn't a big deal, and neither was Gabriel. And we go to the doctor. She orders me a transport chair because she's worried that something's wrong with my lower spine. And you can ignore all the words I put up there. It's for me because I don't focus very well since this happened. But yeah, so we do 3.5 hours of MRIs. They call me, but they can get me in at a different hospital because she demanded absolutely someone somewhere had to do one that day because we all were freaking out that now I was losing feeling in the other leg too, at the hip and the knee. And so my husband went after he brought me to the hospital and found out it was going to be 3 hours. Got our son, came back, and finally from 2 p.m. to about 5:20 got done. So we go home. Obviously I'm not making dinner, so the kiddo's like, I want Taco Bell. And I'm like, I don't even want to argue. That's really fast food. It's kind of grody, but fun. We're going to eat our delicious Taco Bell. And then it turned out that was my last meal for 3 days. I got called in the car, and the doctor said, put me on speakerphone. I said, okay, Gabriel's in the car. She went freaking out too much. And turns out she saw something on my spine in the images. And because my leg kept shaking so hard and trembling during the MRIs, it was very shadowed. So they couldn't tell exactly where it was, but she knew there was something wrong with my spine. So since I'm not a person who gets ill or has these weird things, she was on my side and immediately ready to send me where I needed to go. So I got admitted to the ER that night, and my brother came and rescued us. So here's our fun little countdown. So the 22nd is the night that it happened. The 27th was the day that I went to my MRI and that she had me admitted into the ICU. And now we're going to talk about the next fun part. 3 doctors walk into your life. So, yeah, beginning of a joke, I wish, but you have your neurologist, a neurosurgeon, and a neuro-oncologist walk into your ICU room. It's not fun when you have all these people walking in. So I get to do 3.5 more hours of MRIs. So what could it be? They thought it was MS at first, multiple sclerosis. It's a possibility. That is at least something you can live with. There's actually medicines and treatments. But still not a great life. Then they told me transverse myelitis. There's no cure. There's no treatment options. It's pretty much creating more damage as it goes. I was like, okay. And because my mom had a very rare lymphoma, I asked them to run a check on that too, even though hers was apparently environmental chemical warfare based, which is weird because my mom was never in the military. So then they told me it could be a not possible option, and they did not even want to talk about it. Maybe if the iPad will keep going, it stopped. They said I wasn't the right age. I was too old. That's the first time I cracked up, and I was like, cool, 35 is old. That's great. I didn't have any health issues, so they couldn't figure it out, and they were sure it couldn't be that not possible that they're not even giving me a name of. So they requested a biopsy, and I was like, I am not doing spinal surgery to biopsy something until we know what it is. You just said you can't definitely tell me where it's at yet. So I agreed to more MRIs. That was so much fun. I wound up doing 8 hours of MRIs in less than 24 hours. Loud too, very loud. And I also agreed to do a spinal tap so that they could see what was inside my spine. So this is a cartoon example, and then there's an actual picture of a back being punctured. So if it freaks you out, don't look at the next picture. So basically what they do is they stick this giant needle into your spinal cavity and they can only do it in the lumbar region, the very bottom, which is towards your bottom. And it's supposed to be clear. Spinal fluid is clear. But when they pulled mine out, there was a lot of yellow floating at the top. I made them show me. It was cool. Total nerd moment there. However, I immediately noticed that since there was yellow, if that was blood, it would be fat cells. But it's spinal fluid, so that means two things. It's protein, which means cancer, or it's something that I cannot pronounce, bear with me, amylase, something like that. And because I directly asked the doctor and said that to him, he kind of cracked up at me. He was like, "You're asking questions my third-year students don't ask." And I was like, okay. So there's the actual puncture picture. Huge vials. They filled them both up. And then I was really surprised they let them take a picture of it for me. And you have to flash for 4 hours. And so that's why they did the spinal tap first before they sit me into the MRI again. Because they want that little puncture to heal, and so the less you move, the less likely you'll have cerebral spinal fluid leaking out. So that's a good thing. So it's really weird, and it's kind of scary when both your legs are now jerking around and you can only feel from the knee down on your left leg. So the next day comes up, they told me it would be till Friday that they would have the results for the spinal tap, but I would be able to have the MRIs by the next day. So we called my mother-in-law, who was in Texas, and my husband asked her to come up. We didn't know for how long, because they were kind of estimating I'd have spinal surgery, and we were thinking a week in the hospital, and then 3 to 4 weeks of rehab. So a month and a half, we might need my mother-in-law's help to get Gabriel where he needs to be. So they literally arrived from the airport. My dad picked her up. My husband was already with me and had taken Gabriel to school. And 2 minutes later, in walks the neurosurgeon, his surgical nurse, the neurologist and his head nurse, and a student doctor. The neuro-oncologist, his head nurse, and the chief of surgery for the entire building walked in. And then he sat on my bed. So that's what I knew I was going to die. Because surgeons do not sit on your bed. So I asked him, I was just really upfront. I was like, it's obviously not good. It's going to kill me, isn't it? And he was like, well, it's not MS. And I'm like, yeah, that would have been the better option if you're sitting on my bed. It's not transverse myelitis. And I'm like, great, sounded awful. Not gonna lie. And he was kind of laughing at me. So then he was like, it's that thing we didn't want to talk about that wasn't possible. It's possible. And he's like, you actually have a tumor inside your spinal cord. Not on my spine, not around my spine, inside my spinal cord. And like I said, it took me about a week to learn how to say this word. It's called ependymoma. It's always cancerous, pretty much. It's usually only in children and teens. And he pretty much told me I wouldn't live to raise my son, because I kept telling him I would do anything that would keep this house functional. I can handle a wheelchair, it's cool. But he was like, you won't even last through spring if we don't get this tumor out. They're pretty sure it was aggressive. He's like, we can take it out. We can't guarantee you're going to survive the surgery. You're going to have legs or ever walk or stand again. You may not even get back bladder and bowel or sexual control. Well, so far that time, I'd only peed on myself the one time when I fell on the floor. So we all just thought it was a freak. I fell really hard on the floor, and my bladder would pee. So I was like, okay, that's great. Let's do the next thing. I look for those hold that thought, people. Alright, so I freaked out. Kind of quietly. My dad said I didn't yell. But I literally looked up at the ceiling, and I told God, in front of everybody, the entire room full, Are you freaking serious? I was like, I have plenty of butt and belly and boob to have cancer in. Why does the tumor have to be in the very middle of my body? Are you serious? And I remember literally being like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. That was my official moment that I'm pretty sure that if the neurologist hadn't just scanned my brain, because I can talk, he would have put me in the hospital for talking to something invisible. But the neurosurgeon actually thought it was kind of funny, and he was still sitting on my bed, and he was like, that's a very good reaction. And I was like, great. So yeah, like I said, I'm literally sitting there. I got all 12 people in this room staring at me while I'm talking to the ceiling. And then I turned and I was like, show me. He made a joke that I was a Missouri girl at that point, because that's the Missouri saying. But so the neurologist, very tall doctor, made me feel tiny in that bed. He like steps up, shows me the scan, which I'll show you in a little bit, of this blob inside my spinal cord. So I was like, is the fluid blocked? Like, what's happening? It looks like it's not flowing from here down with all the scans. And he was like, nope, it's not flowing. And I was like, well, no wonder I can't walk and I can't feel my leg. And then I freaked out again. I was like, is that T6? Because at T6, that's what controls your liver, your adrenals, and about a third of your organs, which means I should not have been awake. Then he gave me a good feeling. He's like, hold on, you're counting too far. He goes, it's miscounting. You're at T7 to T9. That's where the tumor was. So it covered 3 vertebrae, 7, 8, 9. So he had me explain why I was nervous. Like I said, it covers a lot of those organs. And he was like, okay, you're much too smart. And I'm like, no kidding. For this situation, I wish I didn't know all this. So I was like, well, what is Spinal Tap telling us? And he's like, well, we don't have any of the results yet. But he did confirm that he thought it was cancerous because of the amount of yellow floating cells in it. So one of the funny things we learned is I'm not normally a person who has like a potty mouth, but November, December, and January, people were noticing and would say something to me, and I didn't realize it. I was like, one day our ice machine at the school worked, and they asked me to fix it. I tried, I hurt myself, and I cussed at it. And then I tripped over something at my house one day, and I cussed at it and kicked it. That's not my normal self. Apparently that much protein cells going in your spinal fluid to your brain makes you have a potty mouth. And it can also make you do crazy, stupid things. And he gave me some examples of other patients that they had discovered this around my age range in their 30s and 40s. And he told me that usually they found it because they injured themselves doing something stupid, like trying to tightrope walk from one building to another on a cable line, or jumping off a bridge into a river because you wanted to land in the deep part of the pool, but it's like 100 feet from the bridge. There was a couple other things. He said one guy had tried to stand up on top of the vehicle while his friend drove. So apparently you do risky things. So it was kind of a compliment when he told me that the only side effect I had meant that I was a very grounded person, because the only thing that was happening was I was cussing. And I was like, okay. So it was kind of funny. So I wanted to know what the treatment options were. And I was like, is it surgery or is there another way? Like, what do we do? So they were telling me that with all those things showing up, they needed to wait for those spinal tap results. And I was like, okay. But he wanted to do surgery. But I was like, wait, but we don't have the spinal tap results. So I denied surgery. I wanted to wait until we had those results. It was really important to me. And he was like, okay. And everyone else in the room was like, oh, that's a pretty good, all right, we can wait a couple days. But he was worried that if I started losing more of my leg or other things, that it would be harder to get them back, because we didn't really know what was happening. His guess was that it was crushing the nerves, and because it had blocked the flow for everything below, we didn't know how long it had blocked it. So with no cerebral spinal fluid helping feed all of that, they didn't even know if that would heal in my spinal cord. So I got to name it. So I had to call my students, and we did like a FaceTime, and they were all freaking out. And I couldn't think of an example because they're like, didn't really understand what the word rare meant. So I was like, okay, well it's kind of like a dinosaur. And they're like, okay, dinosaurs are dead. And I'm like, that's true. I was like, okay, it's so rare, it's kind of like a mythical creature. Like a unicorn. I made the mistake of calling it that. So the kids all named it the unicorn tumor. And they gave me unicorns. There's one of the fuzzy unicorns that I got while I was in the hospital. Just one. So the details of it. 2% of the entire world's population gets ependymoma over the last 29 years. 2%. Over 29 years. It's kind of scary. They don't really understand it still. It's mostly always in children and teens, and it's debilitating. And the tumors usually reoccur, so it's not just a one-time hit. Usually you get it again. It begins in your ependymal cells, because I can say that word so well. And it's always in the brain or the spinal cord. It's usually up high in people in the neck or in the ventricles that go into your brain. And yeah, since it's where all the passages of your CSF, the cerebral spinal fluid, that's what feeds your brain. So it's kind of scary that it goes in there. It's usually treated by surgery, and aggressive types that require like proton beam treatments, which are like pretty new, multiple radiation treatments, and chemo even. Thankfully, I did not have to do chemo. Most ependymoma tumors, when they get discovered, it's like what happened to me, loss of control of your leg, risky behavior that I mentioned. It's confirmed through all those spinal taps, images, and all of that. Apparently you're born with it. It's a birth defect that appears, and you don't always have it malignant, but that means it's been inside you this whole time. And there's no way to test for it until it happens. So, I worry a little, baby mom, but that is that. So here's my scan. That big giant chunk of white in the middle, that's my tumor. And in the consecutive photos, because there's like 14 of them of just that area, you can tell that the fluid is flowing above it in that little black channel, but not below it. Because you can see little specks occasionally in some of the images, and they never showed up below. So that's why all that protein had built up. So then I got good news. I have a beautiful brain. The neurologist told me when he pulled up my scans of my cervical neck area and my brain to tell me this part is fine. It was just there. And he was like, I'll just read it. Actually, your brain scans are beautiful. I know we just told you that you needed a biopsy and more scans, decided to do a spinal tap, warned you could have 1 of 3 life-altering illnesses, and then sent you right into scans. But your brain is bright and lighted up in many sections on both sides. You have a beautiful brain. The neuro-oncologist then joined in, Dr. Kalra, and he's from India, so the way he pronounces things is awesome. And his accent is perfect, and it just made it like amazingly. And so he was telling me that my brain is clear of any sign of infection and tumors, and that the spinal tap results would help confirm. But it was the most amazing brain with all the lights on he'd seen. And then he said, it's as if you are Marie Curie and Einstein in one. And I told him, great, let's not radiate me to death, though. And I was like, okay, I get some good news. And I looked right up at my husband, and I was like, that's why I'm a nerd. And he laughed at me. So the new thing, results are in, death is near. Sounds really traumatic, because it was. Alright, so yeah, I mentioned it was that. So I was like, I will die of no surgery. I will die without surgery. What do you do about your family, your dad? But I get that beautiful brain. So in other words, you tell everyone. Facebook, prayer trees, prayer chains. I wound up finding out that I had over 1,000 people within 15 minutes that were praying for me. That was pretty cool. So that was the first scripture that popped in my head when I'm freaking out sitting there. that the Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. Sorry. Dad? So you have 4 questions that really pop into your head. Go ahead.
But she, 4 decisions, she could not have surgery and die. She could have surgery and die. She could, and but there's a chance that she would live and still be a mother, although she would be permanently disabled. He said, no, I won't. So I got to be proud of my daughter. I've seen hardcore paratroopers check out a heartbreak hotel because they couldn't stand the pain they went through. I'm proud of the kid. So she said, has my family not forfeited enough already? She's talking to God. She gets pretty serious with God sometimes. She says, I can take it, but why are we putting them through more? How can I help them when I can't help myself? Of all the things I have survived, I have survived, I was able to help others eventually. Some have better lives now. Now this tiny percent, this minuscule group of new survivors I fit in, who could I possibly help? He says, this is a war, God. Keep it down. So,
that's my warning, Bill. So that was my freak out moment. So I totally freaked out. So there's your spinal cord. You've got that whole section between the red arrows is what they wound up cutting out of me. And it sucked. But I freaked out because then I peed myself again in the bed. And I did not know it. And that's not okay. And I yelled at them to get me the surgeon. So they did. So Thursday morning rolls in, and didn't turn off my alarm at first. It was my warning bell to not shower as much. And then I filled the microphone. Is it still working? Okay.
what?
And so once that happened, yeah, I got the surgeon. So it was Thursday morning. He walks in the room, and he was like, okay, because they had moved me to the neuro stroke floor so they could check and make sure that I wasn't having seizures or anything. And he was like, all right, so bladder failed, neural tests are delayed, still no feeling. You peed yourself. I'm like, more than once now, let's get this thing out of me. I was like, I'm done. I drew my line in the sand. And he was like, a line drawn for me? And I was like, nope, for God. I was like, I will not have pee and poop bag. For the rest of my life, I'm not doing that. That I must have back. I can lose my legs. You can amputate them if we have to. Line drawn, the end. Not doing pee and poop bags. He was very quietly laughing at me, and he's not a believer in God, but he is a surgeon, and he admitted that he's seen some crazy miraculous things, so he thinks something is out there, but he doesn't believe in God. I was like, all right. So he was worried that we would lose more feeling over the weekend, especially being Super Bowl weekend. He didn't want to get a call in the middle of the Super Bowl and tell them that I was dying from liver and anything else happening, because we didn't know how fast it was growing. So I finally got to eat real food for lunch. And we decided to start bright and early Friday morning. So we called everyone, we told everyone, we got everyone in and out of the building. And there you go, officially on the OR board. My surgery's planned. Spinal tap results are still not back, but I was done. Like I said, no pee and poop bag. So I get to be partly spineless now, and I get to joke about being spineless. My dad hates it when I joke about it. So I remembered, Joshua said to his people, sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And I lived. So everything there's a season, a time for every purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck what is planted. And knew I wasn't going to die. It's not happening. So then I remembered Psalms. And I had friends cracking up at me because I was like going through all this. So to my closest circle of friends, I sent a ridiculously long text message. Like it was a big group message. It was like a page long. They printed it out for me. I'm sorry. I let him know all the important things about Gabriel's family dramas, things they might need to do to help stand in for me for a little bit. I still made a video for my son. I wrote letters to my husband, cards to my brothers, and then I got to my dad and I couldn't think of what to say. He's my hero. My son's my soul. My husband's my heart, and my brothers, they're my blood. They're my backup. They're always there when I need them. Especially Scotty, because he lives close by. Poor dude. Yes, he'll wipe my butt sometimes. I can't twist yet, but I don't have a poop bag. So how do you tell these people goodbye? Just in case. It's really hard. You can't. So, I remember this little thing. When the devil whispers in your ear and he tells you you cannot withstand the storm, you remind him that you're a child of God, a woman of faith, a warrior of Christ, and that you are the storm for him. Bark back. So, as time kept going, I'm sitting there, and like I said, I survived. It was 6 hours and 41 minutes long surgery. I had to have 2 different anesthesiologists. They both cost over $6,000 a piece. That was fun. And yeah, so I found out once they got it out, I fit in 1.9% of the ependymoma types that are diagnosed out there based off my age, where my tumor was in my body, and I survived it. And I actually only fit in 0.02% of that. So for you who like statistics and math, that's even scarier. So they told me my right leg would never walk, move, do anything again. It's totally crushed. There was no way to save that nerve, and they didn't believe it'd be able to heal in the time frame that nerves heal, which is a year to 18 months. And all the spinal fluid leaked out during my surgery, so I had to lay completely still for 2 whole days. I'm told that they'll get the tumor out totally and completely, and they thought they did. And they had to cauterize, which means burn the spinal cord back closed. So that's why I feel like I have 1,000,000 degrees inside all the time still. And then I had radiation on top of it. So I got to lay totally flat, and I finally was allowed to start sitting up to 5-degree increments after those 48 hours. And I got to eat liquid, and only liquid, for 2 days. So warning, don't look if you're going to freak out. I'm going to show you what my back looks like with the staples after the surgery. There you go. They laughed at me because I kept telling them before they pulled the bandage off, the nurses, I was like, it feels like there's 18 staples in my back. They're like, there's no way you can feel that much. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure. When did we check? And I'm like, the one bottom one really hurts. Turned out there was exactly 18 staples in my back. They laughed at me. They thought it was crazy. They thought I was kind of weird. I am weird, but they thought I was really weird. So, all that happened. That was fun. Yay. I'm never doing that surgery again. If this tumor does come back, I'm calling it on that. So, there's lots of data here that gets a little bit. But yeah, like I said, it was at T7 to T9. The tumor was the size of a gummy bear, basically, 3.5 centimeters. And like I said, no fluid was going. But they found out, even though it was a grade 2 tumor, it was benign. It's not cancerous. And they couldn't explain why I had all that protein. They have no clue still. Can't explain it. So there's my miracle. And because all my spinal fluid leaked out during surgery, which doesn't always happen, they got all that protein out. So even though I'm a hot mess, there's no cancer. So the tumor, like I said, was crushing the nerves and control of bladder, which is why I kept peeing myself. Thank God I never pooped myself. That would really freak me out. But then they found out the tumor was actually bigger than a gummy bear. It was 4.5 centimeters by 2.5 by 0.5. And it had its own blood vessels that it had grown through my spinal cord and broken the blood-brain barrier. So that's why we did radiation. Because there could still be a viable little vein that could have created more tumors. Like I said, I had over 500 stitches to reconnect my muscle, and all of those staples. And then because They told me nerves take 12 to 18 months. They didn't expect anything and thought my left leg might heal up to 50% within the next 2 to 3 years. They had to cut out all the spinous processes of T7 to T10, so that means all the little bumpy things that you feel when you pet your cat on the back, or you rub your hand down your baby's back before they get nice baby chunky pat. That's the little bone parts that they cut out. And like I said, imagine trying to get a gummy bear in a straw. It's kind of impossible. I've actually tried just to see. So that's how you know it grew inside. So after all those details, I joked about my spine was officially the Waffle House hash brown menu. It had been chopped and diced and capped and, oh my goodness, basically everything but the country gravy option. Oh, and I wasn't smothered with chili either, although I love chili. So after the surgery, I got to hang out in the neuroscience ICU for over a week. I was the only person awake and cognitive and didn't have a feeding tube. Everyone else was zombified. And they kept forgetting to feed me in the kitchen, so the nurses and my family and few church friends, because they only allowed one person in the room at a time unless it was my spouse or my dad. And then they'd let a second person in. So someone told me I was her hero, and she brought me Chipotle. I'll take Chipotle and guacamole anytime. And I couldn't even roll onto my side. I couldn't do anything. They had to physically do everything. The only thing I could do was move my arms and type with my thumbs, which is really good because that's how I got all those prayers. And I started getting cards from people in foreign countries. By the end of it, I had hit all Africa, most all of European countries, most of South America, which blew my mind, Mexico, Canada, of course, Australia, New Zealand. I have cards from literally everywhere. It's amazing. I have 3 shoeboxes. And yeah, it hurt so bad. I can't even tell you. And they had me on steroids and an open flow drip bag like they do with the liquid saline to keep you hydrated. I did not shut up. You think I'm talking a lot now? It annoyed myself. It was terrible. I couldn't sleep. I had the terrible shakes. I literally shook so hard, the whole bed would shake with me. And I actually broke one of the handles off and stripped the screws because I shook so hard. So in the middle of the night, on my 3rd night, when I was only allowed to sit up to 10 degrees, and I about passed out just going up to 10 degrees, they had to put me back down. I got the weekend handyman to visit me. He only works the weekends, and since they had me on steroids and I didn't shut up, he talked with me for like an hour. Even when he was done with his job, he was born in Auschwitz. And his mother and the ladies hid him under the boards. He was about 8 months old when the Americans walked in to their camp. His mom had died, but the other women adopted him. And one of the U.S. soldiers felt so bad for the first woman that he met. He fed her all of his rations and moved her to the United States with him. And he grew up here. And basically, that made my back surgery seem like it was a tiny little thing, even though it wasn't. But even though a week ago I was walking and I was fine, my legs and feet were normal, it still freaks you out. So there's the awesome little actual chunk of your vertebrae, because there's all the different parts. There's tons of those. So that bottom tip, the spinous process, and part of the pedicle, that's what they cut off. So I have the sides and the part that goes along the front of me, the solid column still, but I don't have the back part in that area. So it's just my spinal cord and muscles there. Almost time, right? Yep. So there you go. They cut through all of those muscles that connect there. So it kind of freaks you out when you look at it. Those are the solid anchors that connect all the top of your muscles that work for your shoulders and your neck down into the middle. Your muscles that work for your low back come up. All of that great fun. If you're really curious, you can check out Physiopedia. But basically, all those little muscles that connect each little spinal part, they're not connected to anything anymore. So I have to rebuild all of that. So the fact that I can do this now, it took me till 3 weeks ago to do that. Every time I do that, if I go too far, I still get a little tiny bit dizzy. I used to climb and rappel mountains, and I was a scuba diver, and think I'll still get to scuba dive, but not very deep anymore. So I did some risky things, but I was told I'd never walk again. I told Satan to suck it. And I told them they didn't know me. Yep, T6 through T12, all that jazz. So I can only turn this far to my left, but I can turn a lot further to my right now. So we're working on that. I can now roll myself on the bed. I have to pull this hip with me because this hip still doesn't cooperate. But I'm really glad because I still cough, and I cough a lot from the radiation because they had to literally go through the entire front of me all the way around through the back too. So it messed with my balance, it messed with my core, so I get to rebuild all that, and I feel like I'm swollen. It's crazy. My belly is like huge still. It's tricky. But I have like, if you look at some of the pictures on my Facebook, boom, giant neck. It was insane. So that's how I know God and Jesus Christ are the greatest scientists. Because first off, I'm alive. What'd I do, Clay? I don't know. And yeah, no matter how much it hurts or how tired I get, thank you. I know that they are. And they're there. And that's one of the big scriptures. Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. I'm waiting for that verse still. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. So that's why I know I'm not crazy. And now that I've seen some of the things that have happened to my body, it makes more sense. So I have one video, if you're willing to wait a second and lose some time to run to the bathroom. I wiggled my toes 2 days after the surgery on my left foot. So the body's supposed to heal from the closest part to where the surgery was, which means I should have gotten stuff here first. But I wiggled my toes the farthest part first. So I yelled at Satan, suck it, my God exists. My Redeemer is alive, and the doctors were very happy and surprised. And I got a visit from them every day to see what else I could do. Because before the end of that week, I was able to move my knee. So I'll show you that really quick.
Kristen.
Yep. Time. I'm going to show up my video that I wiggled. So here we go. Play.
Wow.
So I did that by the second day after surgery, and then by the February 8th, I was able to twitch my knee and move my thigh a little bit. So that's the left leg. The right leg did not join the party until about, middle of February. I lived in the hospital for 2 whole months, January 27th to March 27th, and they took away my family when COVID started. So that sucked ass. So here's the first time I stood up in March. It's only for 3 seconds and I nearly passed out, and I did wind up puking on her shoes. Poor Aubrey. It was pretty bad. And it took 3 people to help me. And then I was like, I'm gonna pass out. So there you go. Tongue to the roof of your mouth. Don't pass out. And now, as of last week, I can do it myself. It still hurts to watch because it hurts so much. It hurts the whole time. You can't think. All you can think about is don't fall, don't pass out, don't fall, don't pass out. But I can do it. And I'm going to keep doing it. And I am going to walk. It just might be with braces and crutches, but that's okay. Because eventually, if he ever gets married, my little guy, I'm going to dance at his wedding. Oh yeah. I can stand up for up to 95 seconds at lunch. About 4 to 5 times in a row. and I can finally, and you can see my left hand, I can finally just balance that one instead of holding the whole time and holding up my entire upper body, because my left leg is starting to activate, and my left leg is joining the party. And my right leg will do it from the knee to the hip. Sometimes my butt works, sometimes it doesn't. It's on big day regularly. The glutes don't really want to party. So there you go. Not gonna walk again, yeah, right. So that's basically what happens. I know you guys gotta go. If you want to see one last one, here's what happens on bad days with my legs. It just shakes like crazy. Some days they'll point straight out. I look like I'm, rocking a little Hail Hitler leg because they're both like boom. But yeah, and that's all the electrical pads they have on me to push pedals. So they're working and they're good there. It's gonna be a little crazy. But there's my suck it, Satan. My God's bigger than you. I hope that wasn't too boring. But yeah, enjoy, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If you want to follow more, I'm officially on Facebook and Instagram. My cousin made me do both so that family all across our country could get there. So yeah, and if you want to scroll back, you can look at everything. It's been trippy. But thank you.
Thank you, and God bless you.
All right. Big gets the headphones. Duh, duh, duh.